an addition into our agenda tonight is under I3 in the consent agenda. It's contract renewals. So with that included, I'll hear a motion to accept the agenda.
I'll move to accept the agenda.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Thank you, gentlemen. All right, that moves us into D, comments from the public from Mr. Saxon, please.
Thank you, Chair Aganawa, members of the board. We have a public comment survey summary this evening. Everyone should know that the entirety of the comments are available in the updated board packet, and which comes out after the board meeting, and that the board gets all the public comment and an opportunity and does read those. So we have 4 comments tonight, a very brief summary. There are 3 public comments about board policy BDDH public comment. Critical that the board has added district representatives to the policy, meaning the public cannot adequately complain about the board in public comment. And it encourages the board to change the policy back to the recommended version. There was 1 public comment critical of the district for waiting for the new superintendent to produce an academic improvement plan. And this comment additionally asks a series of questions about student achievement and the district funding over time. That concludes that summary.
Thank you, Mr. Saxon. You also have F1 is going to be our next agenda item. Do we need to take a timeout?
Yes.
No worries.
We are not streaming or
We kind of
recording.
started hastily today, so yeah, we will give us a second. Oh, we got a thumbs up. We're back on.
We're back on. Thank you.
Mr. Saxon.
Yes. Superintendent comments this evening. I wanted to talk a little bit about budget. We're into budget season. There are several good things that have happened with our budget as of late, and it's something that I've been worried about our budget really since joining the district in late August, and while not completely worry-free at this date, because I never am about that, I'm much less concerned than I've been previously, and part of that's because there's several things that have happened over the last couple of months that have helped with that concern. One, Sean Yoder, our finance manager, and his team have done a really good job of finding and identifying issues and bringing them forward for us to deal with, kind of one at a time, and we've been doing that. We also have our audit complete, and while the audit isn't perfect, having it complete is a major milestone, and you'll hear more about that at this meeting tonight because we'll go over that with you, or our auditors will. Also, personnel. 85% of our budget and then some is personnel, and ensuring that all staff are charged to it in correct funds has been a challenge given the district funds coming into the district in the last couple of years, including the Student Investment Act, Ballot Measure 98, and the Elementary Secondary Emergency Relief Funds, ESSER. And so just getting a handle on all the personnel, where they work, how many, and what account they're charged to has been more of a challenge than one ought to think that it should be. But we are getting on top of that, and it appears that we'll be able to afford next year about what we've been able to afford this year. That's a very general comment, but it's one that I feel fairly confident making this evening, and that's an important consideration for us as a district. And it assumes that student enrollment stays about the same as student enrollment has been this year, and the good news is that the state school fund, by the 2021 legislature for the biennium, was released as 49% of the total for the 21-22 school year, and 51%, so 49 last year and 49% this year and 51% of the total next year for the 2022-23 school year, and that increase gives us resources to meet the increased cost of doing business in the district. And the legislature hasn't always released the funds that way, but it is a smart thing for them to do, to release the funds that way, and it's helpful. We are in hiring season, and it really has begun an interest, especially for hard-to-fill positions. And we have hard-to-fill positions, lots of them, different ones actually in the district, and it's harder to fill almost any position than it used to be. But speech-language pathologists, for example, special education teachers. We have an opening for a German teacher at South Albany High School, English language learner teachers, and diverse educators, which we're working to recruit. in the district, all significant challenges and all things that we would like to, positions and people that we would like to hire. We do have a number of job fairs that are underway right now. In a job fair, typically, anyone seeking employment and education will attend those across the state. There are some individual ones at colleges, like there's one at Western Oregon, for example, that is coming up. I'm not going to give you all the days of each of those, but I will tell you that the Oregon Educator Job Fair is held Tuesday, March 29th. So it's the Tuesday after spring break. And we need to be ready to hire at that job fair. This isn't something that we've done before, is to go to the job fair, have a room where we can actually take candidates, do the interviews, and make job offers on the spot. But being out early helps with hard-to-fill positions, and it improves the likelihood of quality. Now, it's not to say that we don't hire quality educators all the way through up until the last few days before school. In fact, some of the best teachers I ever hired came really late in the hiring season. But in toto, being out early gives you a much better opportunity to pick and choose. Before we hire, it's really important for us to fully understand our current staffing and the number of students served at each school by educators in the district, and everyone, human resources, with the work that Heather and her team have been doing, our principals, assistant principals, supervisors, have been working really hard to ensure that we're ready by understanding current staffing levels and budget. And it's my hope that we'll be ready to determine the specific positions and number of positions that we can consider hiring at that job fair, at the Oregon Educator Job Fair, by Friday of this week, which is an important deadline because we'll be understaffed during spring break as some people take some vacation. Meetings are going to take place over the course of this week so that we can make those specific decisions. We have a really big one coming up on Thursday that'll be important around figuring out staffing allocations at our schools for next year. Also want the board to know that the strategic plan work continues to move forward. We've been working on this since, December, and a couple years before that, but the piece of work that we have underway right now since December. Last Friday, Superintendent Andy Gardner was able to join us for the day as we did some of our planning in the morning part of that. We were able to complete the central components of our equity strategy on Friday, and we'll start work on the component of the strategic plan focusing specifically on what's titled as a primary mover in the strategic plan, rigorous and engaging academics. So the next section that's sort of the title of it, if you will, and it is one of the three key components of the strategic plan. Again, it's rigorous and engaging academics, and it's obviously about student outcomes and targets and so forth. And so that'll be a big piece of work for us that I hope to bring back to the board before the end of this school year, those two components, equity and rigorous and engaging academics. It is the section that will have us focus on student achievement, and I know that there's a call for a more detailed plan in regard to this work around student achievement and outcomes, and our planning on this part of the strategic plan will create the foundation for that work. And so it's an important part. It's probably going to, like I said, take the better part of 3 months for us to work through that component. Not completely last, almost last, first day of mask optional. I've sort of been waiting to see if there's something specific to report about that. I heard some conversation about what percentage of students at your school had on masks, and so I'll be interested to hear if there's a report on that from our students. I heard from a couple of folks who were in schools today about what they were seeing. Certainly we have a number of students and adults in the schools who continue to wear masks and some who have chosen not to, and so we want to make sure that we're honoring those choices that people have made. It has been odd to see quite a few faces today. I think that my biggest surprise are people that have facial hair. Just wasn't really prepared for that. So if you have a beard or a goatee or something like that, I'm not sure if I knew who you were today when I first saw you without your mask, if you went mask optional. I do want the board to know and the community to know that, about 6 weeks ago, we had a week of 389, I think it actually was, cases in the district. 3 weeks ago, we had 27. 2 weeks ago, 19. Last week, 8 cases in the district. So it'll be really interesting to see where we are this week, and then spring break, and then moving forward. But, I'm really hoping that trend is a trend line that continues, and we'll see it continue to diminish, even with the mask optional, and I think that the public health experts tell us that we will. So looking forward to that. I think everybody across the world is hoping probably that we'll see an end to this thing. The only other thing I have today is we have to remember that today is March 14th, which is 3/14, which is Pi Day. And I used to try to impress kids in my class with my recitation of pi at 3.1415953. Okay, never mind. As far as I could get it, which wasn't too much, only 4 more digits than that probably. But I just want to say thank you to Chris for bringing 4 different pies into the district office today so that we could celebrate Pi Day. My favorite definitely was the berry pie. Not that I sampled them all, but I thought about it. So at any rate, thank you for that, and I hope that kids and people across the nation today were able to celebrate pi and the relationship between the circumference and diameter of a circle and its amazing impact on all things mathematics. All right, with that, I'll be happy to answer questions. Thanks.
Your inner math teacher is coming. It's
Can't
math
help
teacher
myself.
day today also.
Yes, budget and math, I get excited.
I actually had a question. I'm sure Heather is super excited to get out and recruiting. I'm happy for you. You've worked really hard on this. This is kind of a new thing for us, and it's going to grow. I saw some budget proposals. So that's great work.
We'll just ask Heather if you could give us a report after the fact, kind of let us know how it went and stuff, because we'd be real curious to see, because it's a brand new way of recruiting, so it'd be interesting to see how successful it is.
Absolutely. We have a larger booth this year than we've ever had before. We added more space, so it takes people longer to walk by our booth. We're going to catch them. We have more principals, administrators going, and to have an interview room on site. Those are kind of different key pieces that we're doing.
Exciting. Thank you.
I don't think the heavy-duty double-sided tape in front of that is going to slow them down enough, but we're hoping.
Tape. The stanchions at the movie theater. All right. Board member reports.
Yeah, I'll combine board member reports with board liaison.
Sure.
School. Anyway, or just general reports. Anyway, so not so much the board member report, but I volunteered at the I Run for Kids benefit on Saturday. Just great to see the community. That was actually the first day you could be on a school grounds and not have a mask. And it was just great fun. Flash Nyquist did a great job running. So I don't want to take away his moments, but that was fun to see everyone, lots of community members and staff were there supporting a great organization. Director Morse and I participated in the policy review committee, and you can kind of maybe see the finish line of that finally. And I also I represent the board in bargaining issues, and so I just sat in on, I occasionally sit in on, there's a monthly meeting of the superintendent, HR director, and the 2 association members to kind of talk about things a little less formally. I think it's a great idea to kind of head off things before they get to be end up on the bargaining table. Those are things I participated in.
Okay, just a little update on a couple things. I'm going to be part of, or was invited to, and plan to participate in the Lynn Benton Hispanic Advisory Committee on 329. Looking forward to that. We were hopeful that we'd have our second SRO on property about now or earlier. Albany Police Department's having some staffing shortages. Probably the next time we're hoping that'll occur is the start of next week.
Yeah, I've got a meeting scheduled with John Hunter and CTE instructors in South Albany High School on March 30th after spring break. I'm really looking forward to going over and see what they've got to offer and see if we can start talking about how to bridge students from high school to family wage jobs here in the community.
I'll respond to Michael in just a minute. First for the important stuff. Attended the Albany Chamber of Commerce Distinguished Service Awards dinner Saturday night, and I am proud to announce that we have the Student of the Year amongst us, Ms. Bronza. Congratulations. Very well done. And here's what they said about her Saturday night. It's the brief version is that she's not merely hardworking, she's honest, compassionate, She has the highest standards for own success and expectations at school. She holds herself and those around her to those standards as well, all while maintaining a positive and welcoming attitude. Congratulations again. Saturday morning, I attended the I Run for Kids event as well. Greater Albany Public School Foundation did a great job with that, and a great turnout. I'm sure they raised thousands and thousands of dollars. I did see
It'll be on Thursday, I'm not entirely sure. But this is the first assembly that we've had in over 2 years. So I'm very excited to see us all getting back into what I believe to be one of West Albany's strongest traditions. So, yeah, very exciting stuff coming up. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Just a quick thank yous. It was definitely an interesting time. I didn't realize how big of a deal it was until I got there. I felt very underdressed. And but it's truly an honor to just be recognized by my community. I love Albany. I always have. I hope to actually, after university, to come back and work for GAPS specifically. I love this community, and it's great to be a part of it. Thanks. I'll go in really quick. So Red Hawk Rising, I just wanted to give this, because it's an academic assistance program, and I wanted to give that a shout out. It runs Tuesdays and Thursdays from 3 to 4:30 in our commons with snacks. And 5 to 8 South Albany staff are present to help students as needed. We've had 10 sessions since starting on February 3rd, and 521 total students have attended. Our highest attendance day was 94 students, and this is all after school. So it's great to know that these students are wanting to get that help and wanting to get that assistance. All 4 sessions we've done in March have had over 80 students present each day. During Red Hawk Rising, when students show a staff they've completed an assignment, they get a raffle ticket entered into a daily drawing for 1 of 4 gift cards. This includes paper assignments, Canvas, Odyssey units, and if a student completes a paper assignment, they can turn it in to a Red Hawk Rising and they'll get it to their teacher for them. And we've had 485 assignments turned in, with our highest day being 105. So this is a great program for our students to get that extra time, get that extra help where it's needed. Spring sports start, official games start today. Baseball starts us off tonight playing CV, and other sports will start this week as well. I know there is a home tennis game tomorrow for the girls. March 7th, we've had our spring choir concert in conjunction with Calapia Middle School. It was fun to see the husband and wife team of Brett DeYoung, South Albany Choir, and Margot DeYoung, Calapia Choir, host this event together. It was hosted at the Albany Performing Arts Center, which is an amazing venue. I think we've all talked about that by now. And thanks Stuart Welch, hopefully I said that right, of West Albany for all your help. And in leadership, in honor of Pi Day, we are still doing Pi a Teacher, where students get to kind of put some money in, and which teacher gets the most amount of money at the end gets pied. I know our principal is winning by a lot, and I think most of the students are very excited to see this. March Madness is coming up, so the brackets opened up today, and I know a lot of students are wanting to do that, and it's creating such a fun environment in our school right now. We had a senior assembly not too long ago, and it was an amazing time just to see that sense of normalcy. We're hoping to get more into that as time goes on, and with masks being off. This was when masks were still required, but pretty much all the students were very respectful with keeping them on, and it was very fun. We played a lot of games, and something I'd like to note is it's amazing to see a lot of the different community events going on. I've participated in a lot recently, and it's nice to see that sense of normalcy that we have forgotten about. And I think this is where you really realize how amazing Albany is and how amazing the community is. And it's just by participating in these events, and I think after a little bit we'll feel a lot of that tension go away, and I'm very excited for it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And I'd like to volunteer any member of the district administration team. If you want to add their names into the Pi a Teacher, you're more than welcome to. All right, Mr. Case, you're up, sir, for our audit.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I believe we will be joined by video by Mr. Larry Grant and Ms. Teresa Rollins from the audit firm Grove, Miller, and Swank, and they will help us digest the results of the audit.
Thank you, sir.
sure can't hear you. I'm hoping she's muted. Teresa, we
This
can't
is what
hear
we're talking
you.
about.
Yep. No. Teresa, can you hear us okay? Yeah. Yeah, we sure can't hear you.
We're muted.
I was decent at reading lips, but it's, nope.
Emily, will you put in the chat to her just to, like, hold on a second?
She's just going.
She is, and I have a feeling it's really good,
There we go.
but start over. Oh, man. Oh, deep breath.
Yeah.
Could, not to be old school, but could we like call her or something?
You're showing your age, dude.
Yeah, we threw away all those spider phone things that used to be.
The conference phones, yeah.
Larry, can you hear us okay? Can hear you, but.
Yeah.
No.
Give it another 1 minute.
It's a perfect example of what we talked about in listening session.
Can the board raise their hand if they can hear me?
Oh, we sure can now. Great to hear you, Larry.
They cannot. It's a perfect example of what we talked about in this session.
Okay,
He doesn't know,
so they're
right?
on
So-
a delay.
Oh, so they'll have to mute themselves.
Right. So I would make sure that they are in the
Can the
Zoom.
board raise their hand if they can hear me?
Can now. They're on a delay.
Okay, that was,
So they need to
that was
not
quite
be
delayed.
watching the YouTube stream and instead just be on the Zoom meeting. That's what's happening.
Yep.
Right. So I would make sure that they are.
Can the board raise their hand if they can hear me?
Can now. They're on.
Okay, that was,
So they need to
that was
not
quite delayed.
watch the YouTube stream and just be on their.
About to
computer
add
on
a
our
fishing
Zoom.
report to our agenda here.
Right.
You want fishes?
So.
Not this weekend. No horseback rides.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, that was quite delayed.
My wife really wants to do it this summer, so we're trying to break the horses in that road in a couple years. My dad does.
For the Zoom meeting, they need to turn the YouTube off and just be in on the meeting. And that's also why they don't have the microphone because they're.
All right, Teresa, you want to try it?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Sounds great.
I see some thumbs up. All right. Oh, man. What a beginning to a bumpy thing. Okay. I'll start again. My name is Teresa Rollins. I'm the audit manager in charge of the audit for the district for this last fiscal year. Thank you for having me on tonight. Sorry, I'm a little technically inept when it comes to Zoom. We're not used to using this platform. So let's see. I started to say that I don't believe the audit report made it into the agenda. Do you guys have that in front of you or accessible to refer to? Yes, I see some heads nodding. Okay, excellent. Then I will just carry on. Okay, so looking at the audit report beginning on page 6 of the PDF or paper document, whichever, the page numbers are the same either way. You'll see that the audit report for this year looks a lot like last year. It's almost identical. We have the same issue that we had last year, and it's an issue that was decided by the district not to have an actuarial valuation performed on the early retirement stipends and the other post-employment benefits that are required to be accrued as liability on the government-wide statements. Because that decision was made, there's a section of the financials that we're not able to put an opinion on. And so when you're looking in the report, we say, well, except for this issue, everything else looks good, summing it up. That issue, however, affects several things throughout the report. It shows up here in this audit opinion itself. But then it also is reflected as a material weakness in financial reporting in the back of the report on our schedule of findings, which is on page 90. And this is the summary of the activity that is reported to the federal clearinghouse related to the single audit. We have the material weakness related to the GASB 73 and 75. But we did not identify any other issues when we were performing the actual single audit itself. And this year we tested the child nutrition program and the new education stabilization fund, which is more commonly referred to as GEAR and or ESSER. So you may have heard it referred to by those words. This decision to not have that actual report resulted in us having to say that the district is not a low-risk auditee under the federal guidelines. What this does is it causes us to have to do significantly more work over the single audit programs to get a lot more coverage. And so it's kind of an exchange. Either you pay for an actuarial report and you get clean opinions, or you pay more for the audit because we have to do more work. 6 1 half dozen the other. Then the other place that this shows up is on page 81, which is our report of the compliance with various state laws, referred to as Oregon minimum standards. This listing on page 81, one of the items on there is programs funded from outside sources. Within that section of our testing, that is where we perform procedures over the student investment account, or also referred to as SIA funds, which were new for this year. And those procedures were new. We hadn't performed them before because we hadn't had the money before. But when we were performing our procedures, we didn't find any significant noncompliance in that area. This report just doesn't say anything specifically about SIA. So I wanted to point out that the fact that there's nothing in the report saying there were violations related to SIA, that means that that's where you would go to look for it if there were issues. A lot of people wonder about that. The issues that we did find were related to budget law, little over expenditure issue and a deficit fund balance. But on this page, on the second page, it refers to our material weakness issue. And so this will result in you having to develop a corrective action plan and to adopt and submit to the Secretary of State. And we can help guide you with that after as well. Let's see, what else did I want to share? The audit process itself was a little bit daunting this year. There was, some turnover in some pretty key positions. And we had turnover in our office as well, which, doesn't make things very easy either. But Sean and Shannon did a great job. I wanted to thank them for their hard work because it's definitely no small feat coming in behind someone else, trying to pick up where they left off for a period where you weren't even there. And all things considered, we survived it and we're happy with the outcome. Are there any questions related to the results of our audit?
So in your opening, when you're opening, you mentioned that we were not a low-risk auditee. Is auditee a word?
I'm not hearing any, but you're muted. So, I don't know, Larry, do you have anything you want to add or say?
Both our pages are muted up there.
Just appears that we're delayed a bit, maybe.
Well, I was talking pretty fast, so I'm sure the internet's having trouble keeping up.
No, it's on there. I think our,
Let's check our mute.
yep. There we go.
Testing?
They'll have to listen through the YouTube.
Uh-huh.
A little bit behind.
Don't know. Can we type our question?
Have them.
It's like we're close to up with that, maybe.
Testing? Can you hear
Are
me
there any
now?
questions from the board?
Yes, many questions.
Wow.
Okay.
Can I just log in on the laptop?
I closed my YouTube.
Testing?
How can we unmute?
I can hear you.
without
Are there
getting
any
all of that
questions from the
feedback?
board?
Yes, many questions.
Do they, oh wow, they're really.
Oh,
loud.
boy.
Because if they listen through the YouTube,
Okay.
it will be a long, long delay.
I closed my YouTube.
So is there a way that we can be unmuted without?
I can hear you. Are there any questions from the board?
Yes, many questions.
Because now we're hearing both of their YouTubes as well. If
Yeah, turn my
if you send me
YouTube
the
sound
link,
off.
I can-
I didn't,
car or something.
to my credit, I didn't bring my phone to this meeting tonight.
If we got you, I'm thinking.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody sends me the link, I can just pass my laptop
So your
around.
questions are very quiet.
I don't know if that will help.
Would it help if all of us muted our microphones except for the person speaking? Yeah, that would work. Am I the
At the opening, you mentioned that we were not a low-risk auditee. Is there a short, reasonable explanation for that?
They can't hear you.
Okay, try it now.
Still recording.
Can you hear me live? Okay. We could take questions in the chat box, I guess.
Is it weird to ask for their phone number in chat? that
That's-
socially appropriate?
That's
Is that,
my
Testing.
concern, is that then everybody will see it.
does everybody see the chat? Is the chat also
Yeah,
live streamed in
yeah, they
public?
can see that.
That is problematic. Probably don't want to give their,
Sorry, one thing that you can do is with the audio, if you press like the expand thing on the audio settings, there's a way that you can leave the computer audio and join the Zoom meeting via phone. And so then it's like your video is in the Zoom meeting, but then your phone is like detached from that computer audio. And that's worked for me in the past, and I don't know if it would work in this setting, but it's like another thing we could try if we wanted to.
Let's see.
would they have to do it or would we do it?
We could do it.
Allie, do it.
And it's like you have to call a number and text something, but.
Oh.
But so,
But if
Well,
we get
this
a
should work.
computer with the Zoom link,
do you want to try something first? Because otherwise I'm going to try Allie's suggestion.
I am working. Okay, that's your fingers.
So we're going to take a 5-minute recess and get set. Feel free to use the restroom. We'll be back in 5 minutes.
I can,
You have to have 2 years history answering those questions correctly, so it wouldn't go away immediately. But after the third year, then you would be considered a low-risk auditee, assuming that you can answer all that list of questions affirmatively. And we can get you that list so that you're versed with that.
And if I could, Chair Aganagua, Director Nyquist, and members of the board. So yeah, some years ago, I think 7 or 8 years ago, there was a change in law around what's called GASB 73 and GASB 75, which required that entities like ours have an actuary determine the long-term cost of some retirement benefits. And this district did not choose to have that actuarial study done, and so we get this finding every year. And it's a problematic finding, and we shouldn't do that. It's going to cost us about $9,000 to get that corrected and get that done, and I ordered having that done today so that we have that corrected going forward. It takes 2 years to get out from underneath that.
Will that be $9,000 per year or $9,000 total?
$9,000 a year.
And we need to do, in my view, we need to do what we need to do to become
Agreed.
a low-risk auditee.
Agreed.
I do, back to the issue on SIA funds, it's new, there were no significant issues, but I just want to restate that, and I got to go to page 81 if I'm looking for that to establish that, right?
Correct. Let me just get there real quick, my copy here. Right, page 81 is the independent auditor's report required by Oregon state regulations. There's a non-inclusive list there that talks about what is included but not limited to, and what's not listed there is SIA monies, which is a new addition by the Department of Education for this audited year.
So I thought I had it, but I might be confused now. There was no obligation or requirement to audit those, correct?
I guess I didn't understand that question. Can you repeat that?
It's not in there because we're not required to do it, because it's new.
No, it's included. It's not listed because it's not a part of the ORSs. It has been audited in accordance with the Department of Education's issuing an audit program, suggested audit procedures for those funds. And so Oregon minimum standards and the Department of Education put out that information so that auditors could audit that money, could review the requirements for those funds. And this opinion is the results of that review. And any non-compliance would be listed here if there was any.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
This is for the 2020-2021 year, correct?
That's correct. That's the first year that that funding stream was audited or was subject to these review of those compliance requirements.
So it was mentioned that we had expenditures go over the approved budget amount. Can you tell me like what page of the budget that would be on, or where and how much,
Yeah.
just in general terms?
Yes. If you go back in the audit report to page 50, those are listed at the bottom of that page. There were 2 funds and 2 major appropriation categories. The support services in the general fund was over by $45,000, and then the special revenue or function 3,000 enterprise and community services had no appropriations, and there was $250,000 expended from that appropriation category.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
And if
Others?
could I just check on this? I just want to, I think a standard practice is supplemental budget as part of closing out the budget at the end of the year, if I understand that correctly. And that's not something that the district did last year, which would have corrected those two issues that you brought up on the over expenditures. And it is something that I think we'll be looking at doing this year so that we make sure that we don't end up with this kind of an issue again. And it simply is an opportunity to make some corrections where something like this can occur. And it's a fairly standard practice for districts for budgets of this size and complexity. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it, right? You have to acknowledge it. You need to bring it to the board and say, hey, here's a place where we had an over expenditure. We want to correct this. But it keeps it from being a finding. It doesn't mean that you should just cavalierly have the practice. It will clean it up as far as the audit's concerned going forward.
So procedurally, it's a supplemental budget,
Correct. And all I'm doing here is wanting to make sure that we learn from this audit, and as we go forward, that we have audits that are that require a little bit less complexity and don't have these issues in them. So I just want to assure the board that we're working on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One thing that can trip you up on that is you can do appropriation transfers without having to do a supplemental budget. A supplemental budget is a lot more work than an appropriation transfer. So, if you have adequate appropriations, you can move those around. You just can't create an appropriation category that wasn't originally budgeted.
Thank you.
So sometimes people will budget $1 in an appropriation category just so that it's there in case they need to transfer more or some funds to that. So.
Mr. Johnson? Please. All right. Well, thank you, Larry. Appreciate your time. Tara, appreciate you guys hanging in there with us, and we'll let you know if we have any questions. We haven't had a full 3 days to look at this, so we'll make sure we email any further questions. That's going to move us to our consent agenda into section I1 is the motion on the table is to move to approve personnel certified as presented.
I'd just like to make a statement here. So we get these lists of certified and classified. I really would like to, we have one name on it, one certified. How many total certified do we have? I'd like to have that number on here for the certified and classified. If we have one certified and we only have 10, which I know is not the case, that's a bigger deal than we have one of 300. Hopefully we have the numbers well enough that we know how many certified and classified we have so we can list that on here. So going forward, I would really like to have that there.
Perfect. I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve personnel certified as presented.
I second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you. And we'll move to I2. Motion on the table is to move to approve personnel classified as presented.
I move to approve personnel classified as presented.
All second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. And I3 is our new item, and that is move to approve contract renewal as presented. And I think that's administrator.
No.
It's a math teacher.
Yeah.
No, it is a teacher.
Just an ad from the previous list we had, or?
It is.
Okay.
Yes.
Entertain a motion.
I move to approve contract renewal as presented.
All second.
Just
Yes, sir.
Just to clarify, this covers a single teacher, a math teacher, right? I want to be clear on what we're covering because it didn't make the agenda packet probably on Friday.
That's correct, and we need to have those renewals done by the 15th of March, and so this is one that didn't make the last list.
It's fine.
Yep.
Good, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Next item is I4, move to approve minutes from the regular board meeting from 1/24/22 as presented.
So moved. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. I.5, the motion is to move to approve minutes at the special board meeting from 2/3/22.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. I6 is a motion requested move to approve minutes from regular board meeting from 2/14/22 as presented.
So moved.
Aye. All opposed? Thank you. I7 is the last one for I, is recommended motion move to approve minutes from regular board meeting from 2/28/22 as presented.
So moved. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I don't see any old business. That brings us to K1. Ms. Harlan with curriculum update for school board.
Yes, so I'd like to invite curriculum coordinator Stacy Lee up so that she can describe to the board in the public the process that we are in the middle of for curriculum adoption. This year is an English language arts curriculum, and she'll explain a little bit about that 7-year cycle and what content areas covered each year.
Thank you. My name is Stacy Lee. I'm the curriculum coordinator, and in your packet, there's just one page that walks through what we're working on right now for our adoption cycle. So as Assistant Superintendent Harlan described, we follow the Oregon Department of Education cycle, which is approximately a 7-year cycle. We got off 1 year with COVID, and so 7 is the normal number. You'll see there's subject areas that we're working on right now. We have world languages, which is actually was to be done last year, and we had a 1-year extension that was to complete that work this year. English language development, which is this year's. Language arts, which is this year. K through 8. We had, if you remember earlier this year, we asked for an extension for high school, so we'll continue that work in high school into next year for language arts, and next year will be math also. Language arts is one of the largest adoptions that we do, particularly for elementary. There's many pieces to teaching reading and writing to young children. And so these are routinely large purchases over $1 million. We have committees that work together throughout the year. Our committee are comprised of teachers that represent the different schools and levels that are impacted by the adoption. So our World Languages Committee was all World Languages teachers. There's 7 between the 2 high school. Our ELD committee is about half of our English language development teachers. Our elementary team of English language arts, we have at least 1 teacher from every school. We have 3 from South Shore that are all teachers that teach language arts and Spanish. And we have 2 special education teachers represented for a total of 18 teachers on that committee. We have 11 teachers on our middle school team that include language arts teachers and a special ed representative and a representative that works in bilingual education and English language development. The committees have met 7 times, or actually this week will be their 7th time for language arts. This year, our meetings are mostly after school for several hours. First, we work together on agreeing on what our criteria is. We look at some research, planned course statements, and develop what our vision of this will be. We did a survey this year, this winter, of 170 teachers replied with their priorities for the language arts adoption, and we looked at those priorities. We also have shared what we were working on and got some feedback from principals and instructional coaches, and used that to help develop what our choices would be as we looked at things. There's a very thorough rubric, and we use that to evaluate items that had done well on the Oregon Department of Education's adopted list. So they publish a list each year of what has passed that criteria at the state level, and that's what we start with. We are down to our top 2 choices for language arts, and so I've asked to be on your agenda for April, both April meetings, so I can present what their top recommendation is. We expect to have that by the end of this month. We'll also open it up for public comments, so we'll put out a public statement and have opportunities for people to look at the materials online and in person and gather that feedback. The next step after we come to you and hopefully seek your approval for these adoption materials will be then to, we've already started thinking through what's our implementation plan and the professional development that will go into that. So for instance, we'll have opportunities for the publishers to come and work with the groups of teachers and then groups of teachers to plan together with the new curriculum. We also work on a planned projection map that shows how we're meeting all of the standards through this curriculum. So teachers have that to plan from. Next year will be language arts, as I said, for high school and for math. And so we've already started developing those teams and we'll be meeting with them later this spring to get them ready for next year. Any questions about the process?
Will we be able to see the materials prior to the board meeting?
Yes.
You got copies of the books for us to take and read, or is it just going to be online, or?
Most of the items are online, but we do have physical materials also. We hope to have them right after spring break available to the public and have dates where people can come and see them, or you can also just arrange with me and I can show them to you.
Sure, because you're asking the board to sign off on $1 million worth of textbooks, and it'd be sure nice to be able to at least flip through them and get a chance to look at them.
Yes.
So I would really like to have a copy in my possession for a day or two to go through.
So I would just interject a little bit, and we would say back to a copy of what. So it would be great for you when there is the public viewing for the 2 different textbooks to head to facilities. That's where we have our kind of textbook adoption room for you to get a view and then decide what it is that you want to take. There are multiple books for each grade level, K through 5, and certainly also 6 through 8. So there's a lot to choose from. And for you to get a view of what that is and then decide, what you want to take and look through.
So will we get a list of all the different books they're recommended we purchase, or how does that work?
I'll bring the proposals at our next meeting once we've decided on the committee has decided which one they're recommending as the top choice. To give you an idea, we received about 60 boxes worth of materials for just language arts. And they don't send all the materials. So they usually don't send the assessment books. There's several small pieces, especially for the youngest students. They have little tiny readers that go with each part of it. And so a lot of it is online. And our top choices right now that we're looking at for elementary language arts, it's between Into Reading, which is from HMH, and
HMH is
Houghton Mifflin
Harcourt.
Yes,
It's a
thank you.
publisher.
Okay.
McGraw-Hill's Middle School. Let me go back to my list. Savis, My View, and Mi Vision is the other one for elementary. HMH, we're also looking at middle school. They have an Into Literature. And then Study Sync from McGraw-Hill. The middle school ones in particular have a heavy component online, and so they only send us a couple books to look at, and then the rest is online. We will, when we offer a proposal, it'll have both elements to it. We're not looking at anything that's strictly online. It's just that when they're sharing the examples, they mostly show it to us online.
Okay.
Is there a way you can provide us a list earlier than the public viewing and with a login where we can look at these online?
Yes.
I think we have those, and it's, again, a list of 2. So there are 2 publishers at the elementary level, 2 publishers at the middle school level, and then you could just get a guest login to take a look at what those materials are. For HMH, it would be K-8, and then the other 2 would be specific to either elementary or middle school.
Okay. Gentlemen?
Just the last thing I would point out for the board and the public is this process happens every year. And every year it's just a different content area. So after language arts, it's math. After math, it's science. After science, I think it's social studies. And it's a 7-year cycle because all of the content is covered at least every 7 years so that you have an adoption for the content every 7 years. For us in this district, I believe it's been 14 years since we've adopted a literacy curriculum that's different. And 14 years ago, that was Pearson at the time, and it was Ready Gen is what we know to be now.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Thank you, Ms. Harlan.
Thank you.
Mr. Bowman and Mr. McKay.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Aganagabas. So this topic is something I believe the board is familiar with. It's the recommendation to follow the CMGC process for the award of the Waverly, Nays, and South Shore projects.
Gentlemen, do you have any questions?
No, I read through it.
Recommended motions are to move to award Triplet Whelming Contractors as a CMGC.
Pardon my acronym request, but CMGC means what?
Construction Manager, General Contractor.
It's a faster way for the bidding process to happen in loose terms.
So just in layman's terms here, we very early on had an expenditure request to do these things because it was urgent. It's March.
And I think if we could have Mr. McKay, I'm sure, who can best adequately answer some of those questions.
So the CMGC process is the alternative contracting method I believe we brought to you in December. It was to use a construction manager, general contractor. We believe it's the best contract delivery method to use in this current construction market for projects like this. They integrate in with the design team and they help us with value engineering and cost estimating as we work through those projects. The other benefit to that is that if we receive no bids for a specific bid package or a single bid for a bid package, we're able to go back out to the market to be able to solicit additional bids. And we find it's the best way to find best value in this current market. So that's the CMGC before you. With that alternative contracting method that we brought you in December, we had to start an RFP process. That RFP process ran through December and January with a committee scoring the proposal and bringing this recommendation to you for Triplet Whelming. So that brings you up to speed on where we are today.
So I think one of the questions was about, kind of timeliness. And so would that be a typical time span to get that, to move from where we were in December until here?
Yes, especially over the Christmas holidays. Because an RFP needs to be open 3 to 4 weeks for
Right.
people to respond. And then there's a 2 to 3 week process for scoring and checking references to then be able to bring it to the board.
And then using this process, will construction start this summer?
Construction on North Albany Elementary and Waverly this summer, yes.
And-
South Shore, we're still trying to work through the schedule on.
But likely in September?
For North Albany Elementary and Waverly would be done by September for the start of school.
But I'm saying South Shore likely will be underway in
Yes.
September? That's my understanding.
Yes, and
Yes.
modular moves before that.
Well, I'm not used to this process, and in the rearview mirror, we took too long because costs went up. I don't know why I was under the impression that when we voted on it in July, something was like going to happen. And so here we are 8 months later, we're now going to go out for an RFP.
Things have been happening all along. We had to hire an architect. So we had a design selection process that needed to occur. I mean, all of this is following statute and the practices of this district for procurement of those types of services.
And Director Nyquist, I hate to tell you, or I hate to say this way, but I think it's true, that like this is the typical time frame for this kind of a project for a school district, and actually because it's CMGC, it's moving faster than would be typical. And I agree with you that construction costs have gone up. There's no two ways around that. I do think that this process is the best one for us to employ and get it done. And so would recommend approval on the part of the board, I guess, I would say.
Any more?
Not that I want to share.
Are we ready for a motion, or we want to review some more?
And we talked about some land use things, all those have been taken care of.
I need to skip land use.
It's not every day we have a city councilor in our presence, so we can school.
Land use is being submitted within the next week. It's going to be a level 2, so it's a shorter version of the full land use.
And that's for South Shore.
South Shore only.
Okay.
North Albany and Waverly's land use have been done for quite some time.
When we started the bond, the city gave us like our own permit guy.
Yes.
And expedited a lot of stuff for us. Do we still have that relationship?
We do.
Okay.
I would also say that, we've been hoping that we could start the South Shore project faster. Part of it is the land review. And part of it is making sure that we've got a plan for where students are going to go. And so we are going to be able to move portables, which we had some doubt about at one point, but we are going to be able to move portables. So we'll be able to have kids continue to be in the classrooms that they're in and have a build on site with as little interruption to the education as possible at South Shore, because kids will be in the same buildings that they've been in, just in a different place while we build on the footprint of where those old portables currently sit.
So as I understand you, because before we didn't think that we could move those, we thought that they would just come apart, but now we've kind of relooked at them and determined that we can move them on site a little bit?
We've decided we can move them. It was a budget compared to student interruption conversation, and that's what the solution was opted for.
And they will be moved. Currently, they have bathrooms in them. There will be some change to that in terms of being able to, plumb them for sewer and all of that, but they'll be moved.
Yeah, so we're not going to replumb them on the move.
We'll have power.
We'll have people go inside. Yep.
Yeah.
Because I was under the impression that you were worried that they would disintegrate upon trying to hook up and move them. Is that not the case then? Because that was the early on version that I got, that we had to be demolished in place because they couldn't be moved.
That was the early concern. In looking at them, we've made a determination that they're going to survive the move and we'll be able to use them.
Okay.
Yep.
So the motion on the table is to award Triplet and Wellman Contractors as the CMGC.
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. Skip. David, thank you very much. Don't run away too far, as we have transportation next.
So I would definitely defer to David here, but my understanding is that it's been historical GAP's practice to accumulate change orders on a project that's already been approved up to the threshold of $150,000, and then to effectively reset that kind of odometer. And so just as a means of transparency and proactivity, we bring it to you today to let you know that we are requesting the change orders to be approved.
And Kay said it very nice. They write the checks. We approve the check after the fact. But they only have so much in their account. They like to keep it low. So the motion on the table is to approve change order as presented.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, sir.
So who signs off on these change orders before they get to us?
The change order is in essence a collection device of individual change devices. So for instance, on this change order, if I could just use it as illustrative purposes, 014 for roof anchors, that is reviewed by HMK, by the architect, and by Doug Pigman. Doug Pigman signs off on that. And then those are collected into a change order that we have here. And that comes to Case Bowman. He reviews all that information and then he signs off on it. He signs that change order and it becomes an amendment to the contract with the contractor. It comes out of the contingency that's been established in the project budget for these types of changes. And we are still within that contingency amount. So there's two different district personnel that are reviewing those and signing. Doug on the individual scope item, because he's involved in all those meetings, involved with, and understands that. And then it comes to Case to sign off on the change order.
Thank you.
So I got to ask this question. So we had an original contingency of 589,000 and change, and this gives us a new contingency balance of 454,992. Is that correct?
No, it gives us a contingency balance of 352.
Oh, 352. Thank you. I see it. Okay. And is it you believe that we'll be able to finish this project within that construction contingency?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Recommended motion is to move to approve the change order as presented.
I move to approve the change orders as presented.
I'll second.
Aye. And opposed. Thank you. Mr. Superintendent, you have item G.
So yes, we have Board Policy Section G. It's been reviewed by the Policy Rewrite Committee and comes before the board. There are several holdouts to this, GBED, GCAB, and GCBDD. Say that fast 3 times. And that we need to do some further review on Policy G. This is up for board's first reading and would come back to the board at our next meeting for possible adoption for the changes. But this is a packet of those Policy Gs.
I've noticed that a lot of the forms that were typically in there have been removed. Where can people find those now if they're not in the policy?
If I could, I'll have Chris answer that question. Board Secretary, Chris Green.
We're actually making those into district forms and creating district processes and putting them in places where staff, parents can access them, because what's happened is typically they don't get updated. And so we have the incorrect form in the AR. So we're cleaning that whole process up at the same time.
Is it possible in the policy to let people know where to find those forms? Because right now, if you have a grievance or something, it doesn't say in the policies where to go find the form to start the grievance.
Yeah. Yes, we can do that.
Okay. I think that would be helpful for people when these problems arise.
All right, thank you.
Any further, gentlemen? This is our first view of it. So if you have anything particular, please talk to Mr. Thompson or Mr. Vice Chair, and they are on that committee and tolling lots of hours into it. Next agenda item is a school calendar.
So in your board book, you have an updated calendar. There was some incorrect data at the bottom right-hand corner of each month, which identified how many work days were for licensed staff. In front of you, you have a printed copy that is the updated that shows the correct data in the bottom right-hand corner. So this is the proposal for next school year for licensed staff. Once the board accepts and adopts, agrees on the licensed staff, we're able to build out the classified, the parent calendar. Classified have several 9-month, 10-month, 11, 12-month staff. So we start with this that really, in essence, there's a few days you can't change, and then there are some days that we make decisions on. We're looking at 191 days for the license calendar, and that includes 5 holidays, 3 work days, 5 staff development, and 3 grading. Conferences are 2 for secondary levels and 4 total days for elementary schools because we have spring conferences. The days that get most attention and that are looked at is in the fall, when we have our first staff development grading day, followed by the 2 conference days. And that's always probably the most discussion, if there's any discussion, because you have Veterans Day around that time and you have Thanksgiving around that time. So how do you get November to be as smooth as possible leading into December? And then the second that has a little bit of discussion, but perhaps really not as much as in the spring, in April, you have a half-day staff development, half-day grading. And then followed the next week by the elementary school conference days that occur. So this calendar proposes holding on October 31st, Halloween, our staff development grading day, and then on the following Tuesday and Wednesday, having your conferences. Because it's important to have conferences in the evening for our families, the proposal would be that staff would start their day and have afternoon conferences that lead into evening conferences 2 days in a row. And then we do have school on Thursday, Friday. That's our one only 2-day short week, followed by what you then see as a 4-day week with Veterans Day, a 5-day week prior to Thanksgiving, a 3-day week, and then 3 5-day weeks. Visually looking at it, that was the goal, to see how many as full of weeks as we can get. This calendar proposes 25 full 5-day weeks and 11 4-day weeks, with just 1 2-day week and 1 3-day week left over. The last day of school would be Thursday, June 15th, with the last grading day for licensed staff to be on that Friday.
Optional snow days, snow makeup days are?
Not yet identified, but would become the typical discussion that we would have. In this one, I didn't identify them. I was working on my math more than my snow days at the time.
You did a great job, ma'am. Does anyone have any questions?
I do. So in November on the conferences, are those full days off, non-contact days for students?
Correct.
Okay. One of the things, I don't know if we do this separately or not, I'm a business guy. I look at our businesses as teaching students, and I get the teachers have other things to do, but I'd like to figure out how many contact days we have with students. How many
172.
172. And then when we have our partial days, how much of a day, and those are on the Wednesdays, how much of that day is not in class as a percentage?
I'm looking at you for the hours.
Yeah, early release Wednesdays are 1 hour earlier than they would typically be.
And normal day is?
It depends on the level. So,
Yeah, that's true.
right? So some are 6.25 hours, some are 7 hours. So for elementary schools, there are 900 required instructional hours by the state. And for high schools, it's 990. So it's different. Instructional days are different depending on elementary, middle, or high school.
While Mr. Wilson's doing some quick math.
38 weeks in the school year. We don't have early release on the first day or the first week, and we don't have early release on the last week. So there would be 36 weeks of early release.
The other thing to know is that when we look at instructional hours and the 900 and the 990, was it 950 middle?
I think it's 960.
960. The district is well over those minimums. I always kind of hate to talk about it because you start talking about a minimum, and I don't necessarily like minimums. I like something more than a minimum. We're well over that. And I think that's an important thing for the board to know.
Okay. 'Cause I'm just trying to figure out how many days of education we're providing to the students, and I was just trying to get there, and it may be helpful to have that on here.
It's generally 172. The one thing to note, and I could be off, I think it's been about 10 years now. I'm trying to think of my own kiddos, when the district went to the community for those early release Wednesdays for an hour. And they've been on Fridays and they've been in the morning. It's kind of morphed over time. But originally, when the district did that, they extended the school day at each level, certainly not, by an hour, but by minutes to try and recoup. Part of the bid to the community was there wouldn't be lost instructional time because they would make up that hour by extending, 15 minutes depending on the level, and that they would never go, under or even close to the minimum instructional hours. And I remember that. I think my 20-year-old was a third grader at the time when that originally happened.
So when I originally came on the board, the elementary schools were kind of all over the board with what their start and finish times were. And there were some schools that were 15 minutes more a day than others. And then they all went to the exact same amount of time. Are we still, through after COVID and everything, we're all exactly the same time?
Yep. So they might have different start and end times, just staggered for transportation, but in terms of instructional time, they're the same.
Thank you, ma'am. If you have any further questions about this, please let me know. We'll be working on it in the future. Is there any other future agenda items, gentlemen?
I have
Go
a
ahead,
current
sir.
agenda item.
Yes, sir.
Are we down to that, other business yet?
Yeah.
Or was it not on the agenda and we're just adding it?
No, we're other business.
Okay, so I'm looking through the current year's budget, and page 45 for the 2021-22 budget would be a remediation or summer school that it's zeroed out. And we've talked about kids not being at grade and how we're going to get them there. Are there resources for that on another page in the budget that I'm missing?
So the resources for summer school currently are slated in ESSER, in the relief funds, and the state, recently the legislature that just adjourned, also put additional funds for summer school into school coffers. And I believe $100 million was slated for K-12 schools, $50 million for education partners. So education partners are things like, I'm getting a little detailed here, but education partners are things like Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, city activities, and other kinds of nonprofits who can partner with districts and or their community to provide learning opportunities for students over the course of the summer. In the K-12 arena, the number of dollars will be divvied up based on average daily membership weighted. When I do a real brief calculation for our district, and don't hold me to it because it's a ratio and percent formula that I, usually is pretty close, I come up with about $1.3 million for Greater Albany Public Schools, and we have to have a 25% match. We had slated to use ESSER funds. We had $500,000 set aside in ESSER funds to pay for this program this summer, anticipating that we were going to want summer school program, and that ESSER funds being intended to be used to help students recapture lost learning, that we would use those funds. So we can use those ESSER funds now as our 25% match. And so we're going to get about 1.3. We do a 25% match, which is about $230,000. And so we end up with about 1.5 to run summer school. And we hope that some of our community partners are going to get around $50,000 apiece. And we should be able to run a really robust summer school program, not unlike the one that we ran last year. We were in the planning phase for what that will look like precisely. The good news is that last year the state put this money on the table in mid-May, and it was a scramble to try to make it work. We've got some time to put this together now in the short term, but we do believe that we'll be able to focus very intently on learning loss at the elementary and middle school level, and at the high school level, we'll be able to focus internally, also on that, but with credit recovery as a key component. So we're excited about the opportunity. We've got some planning to do and putting those things in place. And Assistant Superintendent Harlan, would you add to that, please?
Yeah, I would say, ESSER funds are where you would have found that. We'll use it for the match. Our federal programs administrator, Bonnie Dietrich, is the person in charge of our summer programming. We've already partnered with LBCC around that specifically for middle and high schools months and months ago to plan for this summer. And we're super excited to be able to get some state funds, much more than we would have been able to come up with ourselves in that regard.
So we have a $1.5 million model for credit recovery and summer school or something along those lines. So I guess the other question I would have about that is that in the current budget, there's zero. There isn't a dollar. So we want to make sure that included in our supplemental, or however we do that, that we move funds to that area. No?
So we can spend these directly out of, so we'll get these funds in, we'll have to put them in some kind of a budget category, which may require a supplemental budget. We'll have to look at that. And then we can spend out of ESSER funds, which is earmarked for that specifically and is a separate budget than our general fund budget.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would spend out of that, and that wouldn't cause a specific over expenditure within that budget category if we only spend out of ESSER.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have to determine where the new funds go in order to make that all work.
Okay.
Yeah.
So those won't appear in the general fund.
We want to be procedurally correct and we want to be transparent. However y'all get there, great. The other line item, or the other is page 49 for me. Under tutoring, it's at $12,000. Considering where we are with the state of things, might we be beefing that up, or have you already, and is that money in some other category?
I think the money that you see there for tutoring was specific for avid tutors, and that's about the cost, and it's generally college students for a few hours a day per each week. But I think that was specific to avid tutors. Certainly, we have used and could use more tutors. Certainly something that we'll look at, not as easy to find as maybe it once was.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm all for using that as a tool. So, and I don't
Thank
know
you
how
for
we
volunteering
Sure,
to sign up.
Sure.
I appreciate that.
I'll teach track.
Content area.
But however we get there again, proper process and disclosure to us and the public. Thank you.
Sir. In some of our previous discussions, Superintendent Saxon, we had discussed previous expenditures on summer schools at numbers much lower than the 1.5. I'm just going to use that as a rough number, 1.4. And so I see that it would be a challenge to try to put all of that to bear. Tutors being hard to come by, personnel being hard to come by, getting participation from students. So my question is, will that money be able to be moved forward for future, or is it a use it or lose it?
Short answer right now is no, you can't move it forward. One of the things that we can do is we had about $500,000 set aside in ESSER, and it looks like we're only going to need to use about 230 of that, or thereabouts. It's my rough estimate. Quick math in my head as I'm sitting here. And so we should have about, $270,000 still left in ESSER that we can use going forward, and we can use those funds until September 2024. Currently, we're hoping that the feds will extend that to 2026. That request is in. One of the interesting, so the legislative session is not long over. It's over long enough that I would hope that very soon we'll get detail on precisely what this is. And the reason I'm giving you an estimated amount of, basically 1.3 is because nobody's told us precisely how much money we're going to get.
Sure.
That's just a ratio and proportion calculation on my part. Usually those are pretty close, but it could be off a little bit. And there is a specific breakout for high school, which, gets about a third, and elementary and middle are separate and both require a 25% match. But the totals that I gave you are about right. I have heard twice now that these funds can be spent until December next year. So until December 1st, 2022. The real question is, Does that mean we can run program until December 2022, or we can make claim for payment until December 1, 2022? And I don't know the answer. I'm really hoping it's program, because 1.5 is a lot of money for summer school.
Well,
Yeah.
it would be less than summer, excuse me, it would be less than summer school, wouldn't it? Because our budget year ends the end of June, so you would have 2 weeks to spend it?
No, we
Well,
would have the entire summer.
Okay,
Right.
even though it's a separate budget year. Okay.
It is, yes. Just because it's a special appropriation by the state.
Okay.
Our hope too is the ESSER funds that we have, that we don't need to use for this expenditure for this year. If this money doesn't come to us next year, that savings we could tack on to the 500,000 that we had allotted for 3 years of summer school. So, so that we don't kind of fall off a cliff and get, 1.3 million this year and then suddenly have, 250,000 next year. Any savings in ESSER, that does roll over, at least limitedly, that we could use for summer school for next summer.
So, yeah, so our ESSER plan did call for 500,000 a year for each of 3 years for summer school. And so we won't use all of that this summer, but then we can slide the remainder forward into the 500,000 for the following summer.
Because I think you agree with me, this is not going to be over in a year. It's going to take too much time, unfortunately, to work this way out, but we got to keep at it.
It will take some time. I'm really appreciative that the legislature decided to do that. I think they, had some resource and made that decision. And so we want to go to work trying to put something together to use it to best effect.
Thank you.
I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.